Hey folks, welcome to the Market Internal Review for July 31st, 2023. Not much to say, just to summarize the day. We had Trin balance indication mostly since the morning all the way through to the end of the day. While we did have a bullish ad and vol to start the day, we just couldn't really make any progress. We had a small gap up on SPY at 50 cents. Made a daily gap here, and basically once we retested it and hit Friday's session TWAP price of around 456.5, pretty much considered that we would see some additional weakness today, especially coupled with the trend balance indication early on. We did start with some tick extreme closures up on the bullish side. That's mostly to be expected as I observe this more whenever there's a gap up. If we go review Qs, they had a small gap zone here. Russell had a gap, and I also believe that the Dow also had a tiny gap, but the whole market gapped up. So we'll see an extreme tick closure on the bullish side, or a bearish side if there's a bear gap. But yeah, so we retested this gap and then some, wicked the Friday TWAP price. We continued to do that multiple times during the day, and pretty much really didn't make any new highs. Every time, if you were to enter the market for upside roughly about this time, being that it's in favor with price and volume of the New York Stock Exchange, you would have done okay. That being said, though, this action was absolutely atrocious. Most sides, save for about 130, we started to see the bullish side deliver a little smoother, right? But these moves are microscopic compared to what we normally 50 cents. I mean, that's not a kind of move I would look for. 60 cents. But yeah, so not much to say about today. We had a couple of bear ticks towards midday, around 12:30 to 1:30. And that's roughly when the EU session, I think the EU session closes around 12:30. So if you're not aware, obviously different regions have different time zones, and thus they'll trade the New York markets, the US companies, in their time zones, and then their market shuts down. So a lot of times that initial pump of volatility in the New York market open is because there's overlap with the other regional markets, and they're either trying to get into something or they're trying to get out of something, settle their trades. So the 12:30, 1:30 Eastern Standard Time times that I have brought up in these videos, they are mostly bringing liquidity around those times due to the fact that it is the end of the another regional markets trading session. Just like at the end of the New York trading session, you'll see a sudden burst of volume, liquidity entering the markets as trades are being opened or closed. So it's really no different. But if there's going to be something past the morning open session where a move is going to be made, you can expect it to be made once one of the other regions is closing out of the market. I see it time and time again. But anyways, so session TWAP price target levels here showing their strength yet again. It did become a little fuzzy towards the end of the day. I've been spoiled, I suppose, darn near to the cent we've been seeing on a lot of level hits, but you can see this first upper level standard deviation from Friday's TWAP had acted as resistance most of the last half of actually about 2/3 of the session. So from about 11:30 all the way up until this crazy setup here, which I'll describe a little bit about what I think that might be. But We have earnings this week in tech. I think there's Apple, there's AMD, and there's a handful of other names. So lots of market participants, I believe, are positioning for all of that. The Bank of Japan, according to what I have read, is potentially going to start buying bonds. Just personally, I've been looking at Japan's market in higher favor just because of some of the things, like markets move in cycles, and the country of Japan, like, they've been, financially speaking, destitute for quite some time, and things are starting to pick up for them. But the whole macroeconomics landscape is, I definitely don't want to give off that I have it all figured out, but I know that given how their interest rates are, and some other things, some of their companies I've seen have absolutely crushed it. The thing that I do find interesting too, I've heard that Warren Buffett has also been investing heavily in Japanese companies. So I'm sure he's not the only big money that's doing that. And I guess where I'm going with this is that if Japan, if their central bank is going to start doing some weird things with their bond market and their interest rates, I fully, 100% expect it to have an impact on Bank of England and our central bank over here. So I guess what I'm trying to say in summary is I'm potentially expecting some kind of volatility into the markets the more we hear about what the BOJ is doing, but there's really no time estimate there. So I guess in short, maybe keep an eye on that for any kind of an impact, right? Look at the news events that are scheduled, anything to do with Japan or even the Bank of England, or obviously the Fed. I'll be keeping my eyes peeled for that kind of thing, and I'm going to be watching the VIX a little more carefully just to see if the market starts to price anything in. But other than that, I'm going to turn the tick levels on here real quick. Really not much to look at here. Our biggest band is right in the center, and even though we drug our TWAP down some, it pretty much ended right where it opened. Not quite. I mean, it did come down some, but very balanced. So trend, perfectly predicted. Trend balance today. We had a little bit of a divergence here with tick, making an interesting pattern that really didn't come out to much on SPY itself. But take a look at Qs here real fast. I'm not going to really review all of the indexes today just because they all pretty much look the same. But Qs, pretty much exact same thing. We had a small gap up. We pump, fake dump right back to this TWAP area from Friday. Bounce on it for the rest of the day, save for right here at the end. This gap proved to be resistance right around the midpoint. I've mentioned before, I love 50% or half points of gaps and wicks and all kinds of things, ranges. So this gap zones indicator, it's available on my TradingView profile. If you haven't looked at it yet, highly recommend you toss it on there. You can set it to daily, you can set it to weekly, monthly, lots of different times. If you have a pro tier, or I think non-free tier of TradingView, you can set up custom time periods. So then you could use those with the gap zones indicator. 90 minutes is interesting. All right, so let's look at the trend. We already know that's a balance. I'm going to skip that one, but the ad. So ad, like I said, we started bullish at about 1,300 stocks in advancement. We did start to break over 1,500, and we kind of oscillate around that until 10:30, and we reject the bullish zone for the rest of the day. We struggle with some historical levels that I've got from older videos, basically right where we open, interestingly enough. Then at the end of the day, we make one last final pump, not quite to 1,500. The volt is what I'm most interested in. Now, if you've watched any of my other videos, you'll know exactly what I'm getting ready to say. And that is that when the price does not agree, when the index prices do not agree with the New York Stock Exchange volume, to expect a certain kind of move that is in agreement with the volume the following day. It's just been a very accurate signal, and I took action on it, but I'm within my risk tolerance. The overall assessment that I have is when I see volume like this, I'm I'm going to expect a little bit of a gap up coming into tomorrow. And if we don't see the gap up, certainly I'm expecting more bullish momentum going into tomorrow's session. Now, granted, I hate to sound repetitive, but I will always look at the data intraday as well to form a more at the moment bias. So I'm not going to carry this like into tomorrow. If we dump, I'm just not going to try to buy every dip and whatnot. But I did swing a 1 day to expiration Q call. Now the funny thing is I actually bought it before close, right before this rip. So this was very surprising because we were only about here, and I was expecting, okay, we've got Q selling off, SPY selling off, the other indices were doing their thing, and about the Q call, and then we just really rip. And we just reviewed this on the video I released Sunday for last Friday, how last Friday's volume didn't quite make like all-time highs or even relatively strong highs, but today we actually crushed Friday's volume. So we made it even higher. So we got this volume from last Thursday where we had the Bank of Japan interest rate announcement of basically staying at the negative 0.1%. Then we gap up. Then we gap up again today. And we mostly hold the price, but we do come down. And then boom, right here at the end, we just rip. So I guess, I mean, obviously anything can happen overnight during the futures market, but I'm pretty excited about this. I did say on Sunday's video that I'm still leaning bullish overall using the monthly and weekly TWAPs. We did finish today. We did finish the July monthly candle. So anything can happen when we open a new monthly candle. There's all kinds of things that end up sorting themselves out, different market participants that use different time frames to trade, and so it can always bring some unexpected moves. But I do think with tech earnings, we're seeing a little bit of tech pump again. I don't believe we've got, other than potentially maybe some Japan news, I don't think we really have anything else announced, but on the schedule for news, but I need to go check. I know I just checked Fed calendar, and I don't think they have anything until September, so I'm not expecting too much. And that being said, this is a low VIX environment, so I'm hoping we don't have a bunch of days like today where it's just melty, range balanced, kind of BS price, but we'll just have to see. You can see here on the multi-time frame TWAP analysis, we basically are holding this TWAP range on SPY of 458 to 456. We did kind of come back down into this range towards the bottom. One thing I noted today was that the weekly TWAP, which we just started today, it's the same thing as session in this case, was for the most part staying around the 50% of the range. We did drag it down right towards the end of the day, but yeah, this kind of momentous push here. I should go look and see if there's some kind of news that hit the market right at the end, but Qs pretty much same as SPY. I'm going to turn off all these deviations. I don't really want those on, but stayed over the first deviation on the monthly time frame, so that's good. And for the most part, we're basically just range bound. Okay, so we're basically just in a range. Now, it does get a little messy, but the one thing I noticed is when I was looking at this earlier, is we got this huge gap here. So again, as I mentioned in just a bit ago, as far as like middle of gaps, I love watching those. And basically right around this gap. It's not perfect, but it's close enough. This mid pink line here is the 50%. So you can see like it's kind of uncanny just how many times we are rejecting and holding below this 50% point. And then this candle ends basically right at the bottom of this range. So that's the area that we're working against. And the market hasn't decided whether or not it's going to go up any higher than that. It continues to hold the first standard deviation. Now, tomorrow starts a new month. We'll see what happens. Let's see. The Dow, don't think the Dow did a whole lot. Okay, never mind. So the Dow made a new high a day there at the end. That's incredible. Very interesting. It actually broke through last week's first deviation high. Okay, wow. So if that holds tomorrow, if we gap up, maybe we even gap up over the second deviation high at 355, then we would be looking at 356 or even higher. So crazy. But I'm mainly interested in Qs just because we've got the tech earnings and they definitely sold off pretty hard. So I just think they're the ones that are going to bring a lot of the volatility. I mean, maybe save for the Russ, but you can see the Russell's range bound pretty much the whole day, right within that 68th percentile, first standard deviation, just oscillating perfectly around that mean, staying right within until the end of the day. So perhaps we'll see the Russ Dow pump, and that'll drag the other indices up. Couple that with some bullish earnings, and we could be right back off to the races again. Stay tuned, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, my outlook still remains bullish, but that could change with the earnings. If one of the companies or all the companies dump, I mean, they could be all over for the bulls. We'll see. Yeah, so VIX still under 14, puts calls pretty much still in the lead. I think that's pretty much going to be a wrap, folks. Hope you were patient today. I doubt there was probably many people that got much of anything out of today, save for somehow maybe you guessed this end of day rally or maybe this dump here. As always, thank you for watching and happy trading.